Alright guys, so today I want to work on getting the cab into the garage. Winter is quickly approaching and I'd really like to be able to do some things to the cab, clean it up a little bit from the comfort of the garage. So I invited Austin Powers over today to give me a hand getting this thing into the garage. Seems so much bigger in here. Well, that went pretty smooth. Alright, so we got the cab here in the garage. Got a few things I want to do to it. The metal that I hooked this thing here to is a little bit flimsy, so I like to take this off and put something behind it just to help give it some strength, so that way that doesn't fall off while we're going down the road. There's a lot of seam sealer like here that's cracked and falling off. I'd like to chip that the rest of the way off and put some fresh stuff there. I think I'm missing a weather strip or something. Maybe someone with one of these trucks tell me. Am I missing a weather strip here? When it rains, water ends up leaking down, ends up on the floor by my feet. I'm not honestly even sure what else I want to do to this. It'd be nice to clean this up and patch like a couple of these holes that aren't being used, and then clean this up and paint it. And I think I'll have enough of a gap this time behind the engine that I can actually get some sort of sound deadener back there. And good, they're both awake. They're in stereo right now. This bracket here, that's my shifter bracket. I put this on with it in the truck and I couldn't get my drill in there to drill out this third hole. So now with the cab off, I can get that third hole drilled out and put another Rivnut in, and then we can utilize all three bolt holes. The two work just fine, but you know, it'd be nice to use all three since I put a third hole in there. Yeah, that's really the plan. Well, there really isn't a plan, but that's the plan. At some point I need to do something about this mess. That will probably be its own video. I'll probably make a whole video about the wiring that won't come out until after like the truck is up and running, because this is a mess. It needs to be dealt with. I think that says start Holy, look at all the water coming out of that. That's good. Safe to say we won't be reusing those relays. All right, so we made some progress the other night on the firewall. It's not perfect, but we got the hole here filled in. That's where the old computer used to poke through. And then there was like a long connector here, and we didn't need that for anything, so filled that hole in. The emergency brake used to bolt up right here. I'm almost thinking about cutting out a plate, just so we have like a nice flat surface here. I think it'll look a lot nicer. But I think before I do that, I'm going to remove the old sound deadening inside of there, because that stuff's pretty flammable, as we found out the other night. I now know why they call it a firewall. We're going to try to avoid catching it on fire tonight. Cut out a plate to weld in there. So this used to be the old e-brake, or no, that wasn't the e-brake hole. Something used to come out of there. Maybe it was the e-brake, I don't remember. When I wired this truck, I really didn't, I don't want to say that I didn't care, but I didn't put much time into it. And you can kind of tell because there's like wires going everywhere. I tried, you know, and then I needed more wires, and so I ended up with grommets over here and holes over here. And when I redo all this, I'd like to utilize this factory body connector. I ordered up some pins the other day and sockets, so we'll be able to put some new wires into this. So hopefully we'll have enough space in this connector. I think I've pretty much torn out everything that isn't being used, so we should have enough space in this connector to land all of these wires into that connector. I got out my number booklet. We're gonna go through and number wires here, and then we'll just cut them all, poke them through the firewall, and that way we can weld in these two holes. So that way it's nice and flat, nice and clean, no holes in it. We'll go from there. Now, of course, you want to make sure your battery's disconnected before you just go cutting multiple wires like this. My battery's definitely disconnected, so. There, buddy. Oh, shoot. That's much better. So much room now to work. So now we got some stuff out of the way. We got a lot of this seam sealer cleaned up. It was actually still like really soft and rubbery, which is surprising because the outside was all cracked and stuff. So I don't know if that's where our leak was coming from or where it's coming from, but we're gonna fill in most of these holes, put some new seam sealer on there, hit a couple of these other seams where it's chipping off. Hopefully I can make it look a little nicer than how it looked from the factory. And I think I'm gonna clean up this lower section here. I'm not gonna do any sound deadener or anything up here, but I might hit it with some black paint or something, because the rest of this is all gonna be sound deadener. Well, whoever painted the truck, they just painted right over like all this dirt up here. We're gonna hit all this with the wire wheel, clean off all this dirt, paint that black, just so that way it looks a little bit nicer. We're trying to clean it up, you know, we're making a show truck out of this thing. Just for reference, these Hydro Boost units, if you hit the pedal, even if there's nothing hooked up to them, they're going to shoot fluid out of this return line. And these caps are really nice. They actually do hold some pressure. And so usually when you do something stupid like that, it goes and a stream of fluid will shoot out and the cap will go flying. Thanks to Super Clean for sending us over this floor absorbent stuff. Seems to work pretty decent. Never been a huge fan of the Speedy Dry, the kitty litter. That just seems to make even more of a mess. But this stuff here, it's just like a sawdust, so it doesn't leave that fine dust that you have with the Speedy Dry. So it absorbed that oil pretty good. So. So this is what's called a Rivnut. So it's meant for thin sheet metal like the Firewall here. It's got threads back in there and you stick it in the hole and then they make a tool that you squeeze, and when you squeeze that it crimps this into that hole and gives you a nice threaded spot to bolt something somewhere. I don't have the tool, so this is how I usually do these Rivnuts. So you take the same size bolts, thread a nut onto there, and then you're going to take another 1/4-20 nut, drill the threads out. So it just slides in there. Go ahead and thread your Rivnut into there. Stick it in the hole. You're going to use an open end wrench to hold on to that inner nut. I'm just going to crank it down. And you'll be able to feel it kind of getting tighter because you don't want to go too far. And that is how you install a Rivnut without the special tool. What that nut does, it helps to keep your Rivnut from spinning. Alright, so I kind of figured that this was going to end up happening. I wanted to kind of make the Firewall look a little neater, nicer, clean things up. You know how things just kind of snowball once you start that process. I took this top piece here off so that I could strengthen up my coolant jug. Once I got that open, you can see the bottom of this is all rusty and dirty and all the seam sealer is chipping off. And like I said, I do have a leak in the cab somewhere near my feet. Yeah. Yep. Keep sweeping. You're doing a great job. So that's going to be kind of hard to clean up, but I'm going to do my best with just a hand wire brush. Removed all the wiper stuff to get a little more room in there, and I'll just kind of hit it with the wire brush just to clean off most of the surface rust. Vacuum it out. Maybe I'll hit it with a chemical rust converter. Put some new seam sealer down inside of there to help seal it up. Throw some paint down in there. I did some seam sealing last night around here, and this looks so much better than the factory goop that they... What'd you do? You say oops? But this is a 3M product. I can't remember. This is this stuff here. It's a 3M Marine Adhesive Sealant 5200 above or below the water line. So that should be good if we ever take it to the boat launch ramp and sink it. I was going to get a 2-part to make it faster curing, but then you had to buy the mixing nozzles separate and you had to buy the special caulk gun, and it was going to cost like over $100. And I was like... So this stuff here, it turned out pretty decent actually. I smoothed it with my finger and then it like kind of smoothed itself out after that. It's almost like a self-leveling type of stuff. It does take forever to cure though. It says like 7 to 14 days for full cure. I think they could have rounded these edges or something so they weren't so sharp. Alright, so we got a bunch of seam sealing done. I didn't have any leaks over here, but I didn't like the way that the factory seam sealer looked. It was just kind of messy, so we chipped off the seam sealer that was on top of the heater box. Put some of that 3M 5200 on it. We got down inside of there all done. So that whole seam is now filled with that 5200. There's a little crack here in the factory seam sealer, so we redid that. And then there's a seam here in your body panel, and you could actually see light coming through it on a sunny day. I don't really know how I feel about this, but I guess it doesn't look awful. The paint was also chipping in that area, so that's why it's so wide. I covered the bare metal with that stuff. So hopefully that fixes the leaks that we had in the cab. And the reviews weren't lying. This stuff is black and it gets everywhere. So hopefully tomorrow it's cured enough and we can move on to the next step here. I want to get some paint on the bare metal and then we can start putting our sound deadener on. I want to get this top cowl painted, down inside painted as well. We're going to paint that black because you're not going to see it anyways. It's got that other piece that goes over top of it. So this is more of just a protective coating. All right, so we got everything cleaned up off the firewall. Getting ready to paint it. I'm just going to hit the bare spots with primer. So we're just going to hit this with some super clean to make sure it's super clean before we paint it. That way we get good adhesion. Alright, so we're going to get started on the sound deadening. The product that I chose was this matte 66. Don't ask me why, because I don't know. I think it had to do something with the sweet design. I didn't want something that was like all silver, and this was like the cheapest that was like mostly black. This has got friggin' bald eagle on it. I think we're wrong there. So we're going to get started. We got to get this kind of, I know it's fresh paint, but we'll probably still degrease it. Just get it nice and clean. That way we got good adhesion. We'll see how it goes. I had these on the heater inside, so they're nice and warm, so I might close the box back up until we're ready. So the instructions don't specify what kind of degreaser. So we're going to use our favorite, Super Clean. So much better. For those of you watching at home going, man, Drew, this doesn't look like your first time with sound deadener. For those of you who don't know, I actually used to be into the car audio scene, so this isn't my first go around with some sound deadener. I used to have a Toyota Corolla, and when I took that thing to the scrapyard, man, I got way more than it was worth because it had like 3 rolls of sound deadener on it. That's why I have this wooden roller, because this is left over from the Corolla build with the Fat Mat. See, I think Fat Mat actually included this, whereas Mat 66 did not. One of my favorite parts about Christmas, the boxes that my kids' toys come in, because these just make the best garage creepers. Yeah, check this out. My daughter got a Power Wheels. You guys would not believe how far Power Wheels have come. I never had one as a kid, my brother did. But this little Dune Beetle, or Beetle Dune, whatever the heck it is, Bluetooth radio, remote controlled. My daughter's a little young yet to ride this thing around, so like she can't reach the pedals and stuff. So you just set her in it and drive her around the house. It's great. Yeah, look at that. Instructions definitely don't say anything about using a blowtorch, but say hi?
Hi.
Sorry, mic sync. We got all the sound deadening on the cab here. You're probably wondering why I did this. Seems kind of backwards the way that I did this. I didn't just paint it and then sound deaden it, but that seam sealer takes forever to dry, so I was trying to give it a little more time to set up so it wasn't all sticky, and so that's why I moved on to the sound deadener, and now we're going to go back to painting this. So I still got to clean up a few areas over in here and on the top here, and then we'll get some stuff masked off, and we're going to start painting. Hey, 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 hey.
Mommy.
Daisy. All right, so that's gonna be a wrap for this video. We got quite a bit accomplished here on the cab. It's looking really good, a lot better than it was looking. So I'm happy with that. I was hoping to have this video out quite a bit sooner than I did, but we ended up getting a record-breaking snowfall here in New York. We ended up getting 40 inches, over 40 inches in less than like 15 hours, which is a lot of snow really fast. I heard that during the peak of the storm, we were getting over 5 inches an hour, which is a ton of snow. So I ended up spending pretty much an entire week between work and home doing a lot of snow removal, and that kind of cut into truck time, editing time, and all that. So, but we did finally finish up here on the cab. Coming up here, we're going to be putting this back on the truck, start piecing it all back together, hopefully, right? So hopefully you guys liked the video. If you did, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, or do, whatever. Hopefully you guys have a safe and happy New Year, and a very Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. Can you say ho, ho, ho?